Task number 2 is part of the What the Shell module, which is a prerequisite of Upload Vulnerabilities module, which is part of the complete beginner path that we are doing on TryHackMe. Task number 2, tools. There are a variety of tools that we will be using to receive a reverse shells and to send bind shells. In general terms, we need malicious shell code, as well as a way of interacting with the resulting shell. We'll discuss each of these briefly below. We have Netcat, Socat, Metasploit, Multi-Handler, MSF Venom. Netcat is the traditional Swiss Army knife of networking. It is used to manually perform all kinds of network interactions, including things like banner grabbing during enumeration. But more importantly for our uses, it can be used to receive reverse shells and connect to remote ports attached to bind shells on a target system. Netcat's shells are very unstable, which means that are easy to lose by default, but can be improved by techniques that we will be covering in an upcoming task. Socat. Socat is like Netcat on steroids. It can do all the same things and many more. Socat shells are usually more stable than Netcat shells out of the box. In this sense, it is vastly superior to Netcat. However, there are two big catches. The syntax is more difficult, and Netcat is installed on virtually every Linux distribution by default, which means that Socat is actually very rarely installed by default. Actually, let's see if we have it installed by default. Yeah, we have it installed by default. So I guess on Kali Linux, you have installed it by default. There are workarounds to both of these problems, which we will cover later on. Both Socat and Netcat have .exe versions for use on Windows. Metasploit, the multi-handler part of Metasploit. The exploit multi-handler, here it displays the location module of the Metasploit framework, is like Socat and Netcat, used to receive reverse shells. Due to being part of the Metasploit framework, multi-handler provides a fully fledged way to obtain stable shells with a wide variety of further options to improve the caught shell. It's also the only way to interact with a Meterpreter shell, and it is easiest way to handle staged payloads, both of which we will look at in task number 9. Meterpreter, which is the shell of Metasploit. MSF Venom, like multi-handler, MSF Venom is technically part of the Metasploit framework. MSF is used to start the Metasploit, and MSF Venom is part of the Metasploit framework. However, it is shipped as a standalone tool. MSF Venom is used to generate payloads on the fly, while this MSF Venom can generate payloads other than reverse and bind shells. These are what we will be focusing on in this room. MSF Venom is an incredibly powerful tool, so we will go into its application in much more detail in the dedicated task. So MSF console is the command to open up Metasploit, and MSF Venom is the command used for MSF Venom tool, which we will use to generate payloads. Here we can, like MSF Venom is pretty amazing in terms of the payloads that can be generated. Aside from the tools we already covered, there are some repositories of shells in many different languages. One of the most prominent of these is Payload of All Things. The Pentest Monkey reverse shell cheat sheet is also commonly used. In addition to these online resources, Kali Linux also comes pre-installed with a variety of web shells located at user share web shells. Yes, this is correct. So if we go to change directory to users share web shells and we list inside, you can see that we have pre-installed web shells for specific languages on Linux. The seclist repo, though, primarily uses the word list. Used for word lists, also contains some very useful code for obtaining shells. So if you go to payloads all the things, we can see here for reverse shell a ton, Meterpreter shell, and then spawn TTI shell and references. But this is only for reverse shell. You also have a ton other cheat sheets, right? here are for the bind shells. You want for PowerShell, no worries. Go for PowerShell, boom. There you go. Here is the command you use for a reverse or bind shell on PowerShell, right? We connect from attacker to the victim. So this command is run on the victim, and us being the attacker, let's say we will connect with this one. Reverse shell is basically the opposite. The victim connects to our port. Answer the questions below, read the above and check out the links. Done.